Hello, third graders. Today we're going to finish up the Voyage of the Dawn Treader. I hope you've enjoyed it. It's a fun little adventure. This is the very end of the world. Reepicheep was the only person on board, besides Drinian and the Pevensies, who had noticed the sea people. He had dived in at once when he saw the Sea King shaking his spear, for he regarded this as a sort of threat or challenge, and wanted to have the matter out right then and there. The excitement of discovering that the water was now fresh had distracted his attention, and before he remembered the sea people again, Lucy and Drinian had taken him aside and warned him not to mention what he had seen. As things turned out, they need hardly have bothered, for by the time the Dawn Treader was gliding over the part of the sea which seemed to be uninhabited, no one except Lucy saw anything more of the people, and even she had only one short glimpse. All morning the following day they sailed in fairly shallow water, and the bottom was weedy. But just before midday, Lucy saw a large shoal of fish grazing in the weeds. They were all eating steadily and moving in the same direction, just like a flock of sheep, thought Lucy. Suddenly she saw a little sea girl about her own age in the middle of them, a quiet, lonely-looking girl with a sort of crook in her hand. Lucy felt sure that this girl must be a shepherdess, or perhaps a fish herdess, and the shoal was really a flock at a pasture. Both the fishes and the girl were quite close to the surface, and just as the girl, gliding in the shallow water, and Lucy, leaning over the bulwark, came opposite one another, the girl looked up and stared straight into Lucy's face. Neither could speak to the other, and in a moment the sea girl dropped astern. But Lucy will never forget her face. It did not look frightened or angry like those of the other sea people. Lucy had liked that girl, and she felt certain the girl had liked her. In that one moment they had somehow become friends. There does not seem to be much of a chance of their meeting again in this world or any other, but if they ever do, they would rush towards each other with their hands held out. After that, for many days, without wind in her shroud or foam at her bow, across waveless seas, the Dawn Treader glided smoothly east. Every day and every hour the light became more brilliant, and still they could bear it. No one ate or slept, and no one wanted to, but they drew buckets of dazzling water from the sea, stronger than wine and somehow wetter, more liquid than ordinary water, and pledged one another silently in deep draughts of it. And one or two of the sailors, who had been oldish men when the voyage began, now grew younger every day. Everyone on board was filled with joy and excitement, but not an excitement that made one talk. The further they sailed, the less they spoke, then almost in a whisper. The stillness of that last sea laid hold on them. "My lord," said Caspian to Drinian one day, "what do you see ahead?" "Sir," said Drinian, "I see whiteness all along the horizon, from north to south, as far as my eye can reach." "That's what I see too," said Caspian. "I cannot imagine what it is." "If it were in the higher latitudes, said your majesty," said Drinian, "I would say it was ice. But it can't be that, not here. All the same, we'd better get the men to the oars and hold the ship back against the current. Whatever the stuff is, we don't want to crash into it at our speed." This they did as Drinian said, and so continued to go slower and slower. The whiteness did not get any less mysterious as they approached it. If it was land, it must be a very strange land, for it seemed to be smooth as the water, and on the same level with it. When they got very close to it, Drinian put the helm hard over, and turned the Dawn Treader south, so that she was broadside on the current, and rowed a little way southward along the edge of the whiteness. In doing so, they accidentally made an important discovery, that the current was only about 40 feet wide, and the rest of the sea was as still as a pond. This was good news for the crew, who had already begun to think that the return journey to Ramandu's land, rowing against the stream all the way, would be a pretty poor sport. It also explained why the shepherd girl had dropped so quickly astern. She was not in the current. If she had been, she would have been moving east at the same speed as the ship. And still no one could make out what the white stuff was. When the boat was lowered and put off to investigate, those who remained on the Dawn Treader could see the boat pushed right in amidst the whiteness. Then they could hear voices in the party of the boat, clear across the still water, talking in shrill and surprised ways. Then there was a pause while Rheinelf in the bow of the boat took a sounding, and then after that the boat came rowing back there seemed to be plenty of white stuff inside of her. Everyone crowded to the side to hear the news. "Lilies, your majesty," said Rhine-Elf, standing up at the bow. "What did you say?" said Caspian. "Blooming lilies, your majesty," said Rhine-Elf. "Same as the pool in our garden at home." So like water lilies. But keep in mind that lilies are also an Easter flower. "Look," said Lucy, who was in the stern of the boat. She held up her wet arms full of white petals and broad flat leaves. What's the depth, Rhine-Elf?" said Drinian. "That's the funny thing, Captain," said Rhine-Elf. "It's still deep, 3.5 fathoms clear." "Well, they can't be real lilies, not what we call real lilies," said Eustace. Probably they were not. They were very much like them, though. And when, after some consultation, the Dawn Treader turned back into the current, began to glide eastward through the Lily Lake, or the Silver Sea, they tried both of these, but it was the name Silver Sea that struck and is now on Caspian's map. The strangest part of their travels began. Very soon the open sea which they were leaving was only a thin rim of blue on the western horizon. Whiteness shot with faintest colors of gold spread around them on every side, except just astern, where their passage had just thrust the lilies apart and left as an open lane of water that shone like dark green glass. To look at it, this last sea was very much like the Arctic. As if the eyes had not grown as strong as eagles, the sun on all that whiteness, especially in the early morning when the sun was at its hugest, would have been unbearable. And every evening, the same whiteness made the daylight last longer. There seemed to be no end to the lilies. Day after day, from all those miles and leagues of flowers, there rose a smell which Lucy found hard to describe. Sweet, yes, but not at all sleepy or overpowering. A fresh, wild, lonely smell that seemed to get into your brain and make you feel that you could go up mountains at a run or wrestle with an elephant. She and Caspian said to one another, "I feel that I can't stand much more of this, and yet I don't want it to stop." They took soundings very often, but it was only several days later that the water became shallower. And then it went on getting shallower. There came a day when they had to row out of the current and feel their way forward at a snail's pace rowing. And soon it was clear that the Dawn Treader could sail no further east. Indeed, it was only by clever handling that they saved her from grounding. "Lower the boat," said Caspian. "Then call the men aft. I must speak to them." "What's he going to do?" whispered Eustace to Edmund. There's a strange look in his eyes. "I think we all probably look the same," said Edmund. They joined Caspian on the deck, and soon all the men were gathered around at the foot of the ladder to hear the king's speech. "Friends," said Caspian, "we have now fulfilled our quest on which you embarked. The 7 lords are accounted for, and as Sir Reepicheep has sworn never to return, when you reach Ramandu's land, you will doubtless find the Lord Ravilion, Argos, Mavramorn awake. To you, Lord Drinian, I entrust the ship, bidding you to sail to Narnia with all speed. You may, and above all, do not land on the island of Deathwater. And instruct my regent, the Lord Trumpkin, to give all of these, my shipmates, the rewards I promised them. They have earned them well. If I have not come again, it is my will that the regent, the Master Cornelius, and Truffle Hunter the Badger, and the Lord Drinian choose the King of Narnia with consent." "But sire," interrupted Drinian, "are you abdicating?" Abdicating means for a king to give up his throne. "I'm going with Reepicheep to see the world's end," said Caspian. A low murmur of dismay ran through the sailors. "We will take the boat," said Caspian. "You will have no need of it in these gentle seas. You must build a new one at Ramandu's island. And now—" "Caspian," said Edmund suddenly and sternly, "you can't do this." "Most certainly," said Reepicheep, "His Majesty cannot." "No, indeed," said Drinian. "Can't," said Caspian sharply, looking for a moment, not unlike his Uncle Miraz. "Begging your Majesty's pardon," said Rhine-Elf from the deck below, "but if one of us did the same, it would be called deserting." "You presume too much of your long service, Rhine-Elf," said Caspian. "No, sire, he's perfectly right," said Drinian. "By the Maid of Aslan," said Caspian, "I had thought you were my subjects here, not my schoolmasters." "I'm not," said Edmund, "and I say you cannot do this." Can't again, said Caspian. What do you mean? If it please your majesty, we mean shall not, said Reepicheep in a very low bow. You are the king of Narnia. You break faith with all your subjects, and especially with Trumpkin, if you do not return. You shall not please yourself with adventures as if you were a private person. And if your majesty will not hear reason, it will be the truest loyalty of every man on board to follow me in disarming and binding you until you come to your senses. Quite right, said Edmund, like they did with Ulysses when he wanted to go near the sirens. That's a story from mythology. Caspian's hand had gone to his sword hilt when Lucy said, And you almost promised Ramandu's daughter to go back. Caspian paused. Well, yes, there is that, he said. He stood irresolute for a moment and shouted up to the ship in general. Well, have your way. The quest is ended. We shall return. Get the boat up again. Sire, said Reepicheep, we do not all return. As I explained before. Silence, thundered Caspian. I've been lessoned, but I'll not be baited. Will no one silence that mouse? Your majesty promised, said Reepicheep, to be good lord of the talking beasts of Narnia. Talking beasts, yes, said Caspian. I said nothing about beasts that never stop talking. And he flung down the ladder in a temper and went into the cabin, slamming the door. You ever do that when you're angry? When the others rejoined him a little later, they found him changed. He was white, and there were tears in his eyes. It's no good, he said. I might as well have behaved decently for all the good I did with my temper and swagger. Aslan has spoke to me. No, I don't mean he was actually here. He wouldn't fit into the cabin, for one thing. But that gold lion's head on the wall came to life and spoke to me. It was terrible. His eyes. Not that he was at all rough with me, only a bit stern at first. But it was terrible all the same. And he said, I can't bear it. The worst thing that he could have said. You're to go on, Reep and Edmund and Lucy and Eustace. And I'm to go back. Alone. And at once. What is the good of anything? Caspian, dear, said Lucy. You knew we'd have to go back to our own world sooner or later. Yes, said Caspian with a sob. But this is sooner. You'll all feel better when you go back to Ramandu's land, said Lucy. He cheered up a little bit later on, but it was a grievous parting on both sides, and I will not dwell on it. About 2 o'clock in the afternoon, well victualled and watered, though they knew they would need neither food nor drink, and with Reepicheep's coracle on board, the boat pulled away from the Dawn Treader to row through the endless carpet of lilies. The Dawn Treader flew all her flags and hung out her shields to honor their departure. Tall and big and homelike, she looked from their low position with all the lilies around them. And even before she was out of sight, they saw her turn and begin rowing westward. Yet though Lucy shed a few tears, she could not feel as much as you might have expected. The light, the silence, the tingling smell of the silver sea, even in some odd ways the loneliness itself, were too exciting. There was no need to row, for the current drifted them as steadily to the east. None of them slept or ate. All that night and all the next day they glided eastward. When on the third day dawned, with a brightness that you could not even bear to see even if we had dark glasses on, they saw a wonder ahead. It was a wall that stood up between them and the sky, a greenish-gray, tumbling, shimmering wall. Then up came the sun, and at its first rising, they saw it through the wall, and it turned into wonderful rainbow colors. Then they knew that the wall was really a long, tall wave, a wave endlessly fixed in one place, as you might often see on the edge of a waterfall. It seemed to be about 30 feet high, and the current was gliding them swiftly towards it. You might have supposed that they would have thought of their danger. They didn't. I don't think anyone could have in their position. For now they saw something, not only behind the wave, but behind the sun. They could not have seen it if the sun, let's start that sentence again. They could not have seen even the sun if their eyes had not been strengthened by the water of the last sea. But now they could look at the rising sun and see it clearly and things beyond it. What they saw, eastward beyond the sun, was a range of mountains. It was so high that either they never saw the top of it or they soon forgot it. None of them remembers seeing any sky in that direction, and the mountains must really have been outside the world, for any mountains, even a quarter of a 20th of that height, ought to have been ice and snow. But these were warm and green and full of forests and waterfalls, however high you looked. And suddenly there came a breeze from the east, tossing the top of the wave into the foaming shapes, and ruffled the smooth water all around them. It lasted only a second, but it only lasted a second or so, but what it brought them was a second note of these three children we'll never forget. It brought both a smell and a sound, a musical sound. Edmund and Eustace would never talk about it afterwards. Lucy could only say, "It would break your heart." "Why," said I, "was it so sad?" "Sad? No," said Lucy. No one in the boat doubted that they were seeing beyond the end of the world and into Aslan's country. At that moment there was a crunch. The boat ran aground. The water was too shallow now even for it. "This," said Reepicheep, "is where I go on alone." They did not even try to stop him, for everything now felt as if it had been fated or happened before. They helped him lower his little coracle, and then he took off his sword. "I shall need it no more," he said, and flung it far away into the lilied sea, where it fell and stood upright with the hilt above the surface. Then he bade them good-bye, trying to be sad for their sake, but he was quivering with happiness. Lucy, for the first and last time, did what she had wanted to do, taking him in her arms and caressing him. Then hastily he got into his coracle and took his paddle, and the current caught it, and away he went, very black against the lilies. But no lilies grew on the wave. It was a smooth green slope, and the coracle went more and more quickly and beautifully. It rushed to the wave's side. For one split second they saw the shape and Reepicheep's at the very top, and then it vanished. And since that moment, no one can truly claim to have seen Reepicheep the mouse. But my belief is that he came safe to Aslan's country and is alive there to this day. As the sun rose, the sight of the mountains outside the world faded. The wave remained, but there was only blue sky behind it. The children got out of the boat and waded, not towards the wave, but southward, with the wall of water on their left. They could not have told you why they did this. It was their fate. Though they felt, and had been, very grown up on the Dawn Treader, they now felt just the opposite, and held hands as they waded through the lilies. They never felt tired. The sun was warm, and all the time it got shallower. At last they were on dry sand, and then on grass, a huge plain of very fine short grass, almost level with the silver sea, and spreading in every direction, without so much as a molehill. And of course, as always does in a perfectly flat place without trees, it looked as if the sky came down to meet the grass in front of them. But as they went on, they got the strangest impression that here, at last, the sky really did come down and join the earth, a blue wall, very bright but real and solid, more like glass than anything else. And soon they were quite sure of it. They were very near it now. But between them and the foot of the sky were something so white on the green grass that even their eagle's eyes could hardly look at it. They came on and saw that it was a lamb. "Come and have breakfast," said the lamb in a sweet, milky voice. They noticed for the first time that there was a fire lit on the grass and fish roasting on it. They sat down and ate the fish, hungry now for the first time for many days, and it was the most delicious food they had ever tasted. Okay, now, I want you to keep this in mind when we're doing our religion lesson a little bit later, okay? "Please, lamb," said Lucy, "is this the way to Aslan's country?" "Not for you," said the lamb. "For you, the door to Aslan's country is from your own world." "What?" said Edmund. "Is there a way into Aslan's country from our world, too?" "There is a way into my country from all the worlds," said the lamb. But as he spoke, his snowy white flushed into tawny gold, and his size changed, and it was Aslan himself, towering above them and scattering light from his mane. "Oh, Aslan," said Lucy, "will you tell us how to get into your country from our world?" "I shall be telling you all the time," said Aslan, "but I will not tell you how long or short the way will be. only that it lies across a river. But do not fear that, for I am the great bridge builder. And now come, I will open the door to the sky, and I will send you to your own land." "Please," said Aslan, "before we go, will you tell us when you can come back to Narnia again? Please? Oh, do make it soon." "Dearest," said Aslan very gently, "you and your brother will not be coming back to Narnia." "Oh, Aslan," said Edmund and Lucy, both together in despairing voices. "You are too old, children," said Aslan. "You must begin to come close to your own world now." "It isn't Narnia, you know," sobbed Lucy. "It's you. We shan't meet you there, and how can we live, never meeting you?" "But you shall meet me, dear one," said Aslan. "Are are you there too, sir?" said Edmund. "I am," said Aslan, "and there I have another name. You must learn to know me by that name. And that is the very reason why you were brought to Narnia, that by knowing me here for a little, you may know me better there." "And is Eustace never to come back here either?" said Lucy. "Child," said Aslan, "do you really need to know that? Come, I am opening the door in the sky." Then, in one moment, there was a rending of the blue wall, like a curtain being torn, and a terrible white light from beyond the sky, and the feel of Aslan's mane, and a lion's kiss on their foreheads, and then the back bedroom in Aunt Alberta's home in Cambridge. Only two more things need to be told. One is that Caspian and all his men came safely back to Ramandu's island. The three lords woke from their sleep. Caspian married Ramandu's daughter, and they reached Narnia in the end, and she became a great queen and the mother and grandmother of great kings. The other is that back in our own world, everyone soon started saying how Eustace had improved and how you'd never know him for the same boy. Everyone except Aunt Alberta, who said that he had become very commonplace and tiresome, and it must have been the influence of those Pevensey children. The end. So, Voyage of the Dawn Treader, I hope you've enjoyed this one. We're going to take a break from Narnia. Next week, I'm going to start another book. You'll have to wait and see what it is. But it's possible I'll read one more Narnia before the end of the year. We'll have to kind of see how things go. I hope you enjoyed it. Miss you, love you. I've enjoyed sharing this with you. Have a good rest of your day.